Our next candidate and is another Quincy resident. She is also a member or an associate member of the Ward 5 Democratic City Committee, former member of the Ward 6 Committee. Her name is Courtney Madden, and we want to welcome Courtney this evening. Where are you, Courtney? There you are. Welcome.
Thanks, Alicia.
Thank you for being with us tonight. Each candidate has been given 15 minutes. I did, as I told you weren't allowed in. Our members were explained as to what this job entailed. Great. And the number of years that you serve and your salary. So let us hear from you as to why you want to be the Registrar Probate.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. And it's nice to be home this evening. Figuratively and literally. Welcome to my home in Wollaston, and thank you everyone for letting me into your houses this evening. 6 months ago, I kicked off this campaign at the Quincy Democratic Town Committee meeting at Quincy High School. For those of you who I have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Courtney Madden. I am an attorney, a nonprofit executive, and an advocate. I'm running for Norfolk County Registrar of Probate because the Family and Probate Court touches each and every one of our homes. And if COVID-19 has taught us anything, and if my upbringing in Quincy has taught me anything, it's that home matters. I'm running on a platform that focuses in 3 key areas. I am the only candidate in this race with public and private management experience, with a vision for what I want to do with this office, a plan of how to get there, and a background and a track record to prove that I can do it. The 3 areas I want to focus on is embracing technology. It's not a catchphrase. What that means is really upgrading and scaling a digital infrastructure that the court system currently does not have. We can do this. Right now, the court is operating about 50% through Zoom, but there will come a time where we can meet back in person, and it's important that people are able to go to the courthouse. What I'm talking about with the digital infrastructure is building out an e-filing system that makes sense, making sure that you can find programs and resources online, which you presently can't do, and making sure that the office is accessible for those who maybe can't get to the courthouse as easily to access those resources. The second piece is really accessibility. And I started to touch upon that in embracing a digital infrastructure. You cannot have satellite offices if you don't have a digital infrastructure. It doesn't make sense. It's inefficient to have satellite offices that then a staff needs to bring back to the courthouse to keep your file together. So you need to have these pieces work interchangeably. But when we talk about accessibility, it's so much more than mobility or transportation, because not everyone has a car, which I'm sure that you've already heard tonight. But I think about that single mom from Quincy who's got to catch a bus to the Quincy Center T station and then take a commuter rail line to University Ave and then walk a mile through the industrial park and then through some construction to the courthouse. And by the time they get there, if they've got a toddler in tow, they are stressed out, they are unable to assist their counsel. And if they don't have a counsel, they're even more stressed out because they're trying to figure out how to navigate the court system, and there's absolutely nowhere for their toddler to be. Imagine going to the dentist office, except everything that happens impacts your life that way. And there's so many more aspects of accessibility that I'd love to talk about, and we can do that in the question and answer part. The third part is really building out the public-private partnerships. Pat McDermott has done a tremendous job in bringing nonprofits into the courthouse, and these programs truly invest in success outside the courtroom. It's one thing to have a decision rendered. It's another thing to live with the consequences. When an individual takes custody of a grandchild, school systems are so different today than when they were doing their first tour of parenting. Having programs that support them are so essential. But there's other aspects like Dove, and having domestic violence advocates who are there, or even just to have a conversation about what it might look like to leave a toxic relationship, are critical to those who are reaching out for that support. It takes a long way to get there, and once they're there, we want to make sure that the support network is there for them to make that critical decision. Right now, Dove's there 1 day a week. I would love to see that increased. Finally, the Lawyer of the Day program, which I'm sure my opponents have talked about. They want to expand it. How? I've really thought about this. I have a background in building out coalitions. Right now, I sit as a chair of the National Pipeline Table for Democratic and Progressive Training Organizations. I built it in 2016, and I've chaired it since then. I understand how to bring together higher education and some of our other partners to make things work. When we talk about the Lawyer of the Day program, it is not just alleviating some of the filing or administrative burden that comes with scaling a digital infrastructure to have current attorneys fill those gaps. It's also about encouraging new attorneys who are coming into practice to consider family law as their primary practice area. As a law student, I had the unique opportunity to serve as a clinic 303 certified student attorney. What the heck does that mean, right? If you didn't go to law school, you're probably not sure what that means. In your third year of law school, as long as you have a supervising attorney, you can practice. And there are plenty of attorneys who are willing to supervise student attorneys in that way, and these are zealous advocates. They can help us bridge a lot of gaps, language gaps and other barriers, and really centering cultural humility in terms of how we approach constituents who are coming into the office. On September 1st, you have a choice. You could choose an attorney or a politician, or you could go for somebody who's an attorney and a leader and a servant. I'm that person. I'm asking for your vote, not just because I'm the only attorney running from Quincy, not just because I grew up in Marymount and because this is my hometown, but because you can trust me to fight as zealously for your family as I will for mine, because this is about home. So on September 1st or before, if it's safer for you to mail in your ballot or to go down to City Hall and vote early, I ask for you to check Madden. I won't let you down, and I will certainly be the person that you need in that office. And I'd be delighted to take any questions.
Okay, we have our first question from Karen Cobb.
Hey, Karen.
Hey, nice to finally meet you, at least virtually. You touched on something very dear to me, the lack of accessibility traveling from the community rail station to the courthouse. I am a disabilities advocate, as well as a deaf single mom and a former survivor of domestic violence. I went through that process at the probate court over 15 years ago, and if I did not have a strong family and friend support, I would probably still be stuck where I am because I could not get there easily. There were no supports for people with disabilities or deaf people. The lawyer of the day was a wonderful person and could see that I was terrified and had no support. So he literally followed me around the whole day. He called for someone else to come in to take his place and took care of me the whole day. And I realized that's 1 out of a million chance of getting that kind of care and support. So I have this burning desire to see that paid forward. Would it be possible to talk later on about the possibility of creating a shuttle bus, an accessible shuttle bus from the Canton Community Rail Station to the courthouse? I know right now it's probably not the best time, but given that so many people with disabilities cannot get there and the ride is a nightmare because I think they have to change between programs in Canton, so that's very difficult. And that also can make people feel vulnerable because it can take up to 2 hours to wait for what's literally a 20-minute ride. So they can spend literally the whole day and they can risk missing very important hearings and court details. So I'd like to propose later on if it's possible to create a shuttle, an accessible shuttle between the station and the courthouse, and to create an actual advocacy program for people with disabilities in the courthouse. I know that courthouse have to have ADA coordinators, but they're limited and sometimes they can't always be there. But to create interns or volunteers, they can be social workers, they can be vocational rehab counselors, they can be ASL interpreters that are doing internship. So maybe an internship program at the courthouse might also be a possibility. Does that sound feasible to you?
Yeah, so Karen, first of all, thank you for sharing your story, because our stories have power, and that is not easy to do on a mixed audience. So thank you for that, and thank you for your advocacy. Second, there was a couple of things that you said there that I just want to touch upon. I'm a scrappy nonprofit executive.
Mhm.
I manage budgets, and when I have my eyes set on something that needs to happen for my community, I figure it out. So even if a shuttle bus is not necessarily in the budget, there are other routes. And I think that that's something that I bring that's very different from all of my opponents, is that I have a background of building coalitions and I have a background of building partnerships. And for instance, I already have existing partnerships with both Lyft and Uber. So while a shuttle bus from the station sounds great, service from your direct home also sounds great. And these corporations are looking for opportunities to, quote unquote, be good neighbors. This is a way that they can be a good neighbor. You just got to ask. And so building those out and exploring those, I think, are so very critical in terms of increasing accessibility.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have Danielle Kemp.
Hey, Danielle.
Hi, Courtney. So Karen touched on accessibility mostly. That's what I've generally been asking everyone here. And she mentioned, you could probably tell from her talking, she is deaf. And she's confided in me back when she went through all this. She didn't even tell anybody she was deaf going through it because she was terrified she wouldn't get services. That's different today. You mentioned accessibility and said you want to touch on that. How would you actually make sure there is that once you get to the courthouse?
So I think a lot of it is education. When we talk about accessibility, folks go to their personal experience or the first thing to their mind. And so when you do a 360 accessibility check, you're going to find weak points that you're going to have to zero in and pay attention to. In the area of deaf or hard of hearing, it's great to have ASL interpreters at the courthouse, but the reality is not everybody signs. And so having CART services and thinking about some of those other aspects are super important. Because I have run programs, because I've been a teacher, I understand that there are many different ways in which someone might need to present to the courthouse or receive services at the courthouse. And I want to bring all of that experience to the registry. That's really important to me. Another question? Oh, we got one in the chat.
I'm not sure if we have any further questions.
We got one in the chat. You talked about. You want to read it, Melissa?
Oh, no, if it's in the chat, I just need to see who it is. Okay, it's Colin. I need to check. Okay, so now I'm going to unmute Colin McMahon as soon as I can find him. There we go.
Hi, Courtney. So
Hey,
my
Colin.
question is, hi, you talked about the need to go digital and embrace technology. It is the 21st century. So can you elaborate a little bit more on your plan for this, as well as the fact that we are talking, this would be tremendously sensitive and private information. So would you have plans to help keep that safe? Would that include cybersecurity initiatives as well as education initiatives? What would that look like?
Yes, so great question, right? Because these are super intimate legal proceedings, oftentimes involving minors that you can't just throw up on the internet for anybody to find. What I'm talking about is a secure entry point, much like you might have for your student loans or your taxes, where you have that's password protected, probably two-step authentication for individuals that would only be accessible to the parties of that case. Think of it as a way of, did they file that? Let me check it, instead of having to call the courthouse, have somebody look it up, mail it to you. All of those pieces I think are super successful. There's an organization called Guidehouse. They broke off from PricewaterhouseCoopers and to be their public sector consultant, and they actually worked with the Michigan court system to build out a secure data entry point specifically for the family court. They did build out some other areas for the criminal court. Those filings are public, but simply making those things a lot easier for both attorneys and for the everyday citizen. When I first started running and I had conversations with different members of the registry community, I was struck by a story of a woman who was married in the 60s and was divorced in the 70s, never formally changed their name. We all have to go to the DMV and get a real ID. I know we're not flying anywhere, but in order to fly, we have to get a real ID. The only way, they needed to get a copy of their divorce decree. The only way to do that was to, thankfully, call Pat McDermott and have somebody print it out, scan it again, and then email it to them. That's an incredibly inefficient system. That is no fault of the current staff, but it simply just needs to be a priority in terms of building it out.
Okay, thank you.
Melissa, if I could end on one thing, I would love to. I know that you all are trying to get back on schedule.
Exactly, Courtney, I was just going to tell you, hey, you have about 20 seconds, so please go ahead and make your closing remarks.
I will. So the choice in this race is clear. There are stark differences between my opponents and myself. I'm asking for your vote because I am an advocate, because I'm an attorney, and because I'm a leader. What I bring to that courthouse is a breath of fresh air. I'm not a politician. I'm not going to BS you. I'm going to tell you straight what I can do and how I will accomplish it. I'm endorsed by the Massachusetts Retirees Association, which is incredibly humbling because these are the individuals that I worked with as I was coming up in my career and taught me what public service should be and what it can be. They trust me with their endorsement. I'm also endorsed by Run for Something, which is an organization dedicated to uplifting new voices in leadership. So essentially, I've been endorsed by the leaders of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And I hope to count you as part of it. So on September 1st or before, please check the box next to Madden. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Courtney. We so appreciate you coming.
Thank you all. You have a good one.
You too. Take care.